Hello everyone, in this video I'll show you how to enable versioning and enforce versioning on all your S3 buckets using config auto remediation feature. Let me log into my AWS account. Let me switch to North Virginia region. This is a brand new account, so I'll enable config in this account first. Click on confirm. I have successfully enabled config in this brand new account. Now let me go to rules. I'll click on add rule. I'll use the AWS managed rule. Now here I'll search for the rule with the keyword versioning. Yeah, S3 bucket versioning enabled. So this rule will evaluate the S3 buckets created in our AWS account, and if versioning is not enabled, this will be marking the buckets as non-compliant. So let me enable this rule. So let's have a quick look at the rules description. So versioning allows you to recover objects from accidental deletion or overwrite. So it's an essential feature to have versioning enabled on your critical S3 buckets. So now let me create an S3 bucket without versioning enabled. I'll click on create bucket. Let me name it I'll use the default settings, and the default setting is versioning is disabled by default. So I'll create this bucket. Yep, so the bucket is created, and if you go to the properties, versioning is disabled. Now this rule should mark this bucket created as non-compliant because versioning is disabled. As expected, it has marked the config bucket as non-compliant since config bucket also does not have versioning enabled. Now let me click on reevaluate so that the new bucket lingesh 18.19.91 is also marked as non-compliant. So the config rule is being reevaluated now. Let's refresh and see if the lingesh 18.19 bucket is reflecting as non-compliant. Yeah, now I can see this lingesh 1891 bucket has been marked as not compliant. So now to make these buckets compliant, we can do it in two ways. Either we can go to these buckets and enable the versioning, or we can auto remediate these buckets and run an automation to enable versioning. So now let's look at the automation part and see how we can configure the remediation to ensure that these non-compliant S3 buckets are versioning enabled. So go to manage remediation Click on automatic remediation. Choose the remediation action here, and scroll down and select AWS Config Versioning. This is an systems manager automation document, and this document will enable the versioning on the buckets that you specify. So you can pass the bucket name as the resource ID parameter. The versioning state is optional, and we have to now create an IAM role for the SSM to be able to perform the necessary action on the S3 bucket. Let's go to IAM. Create a role. Opt for systems manager. Click on next. We can also use the S3 full access, but since we have to follow the principle of least privilege access, so let's create a new custom policy here. Create policy. I'll choose S3. Click on list bucket, and then search for versioning, get bucket versioning, and put bucket versioning on all resources. So I have added these three permissions that are required for this rule. Let me also add the list bucket. Yeah, now I can see the three actions. Click on next. I'll name it S3 underscore versioning. I'll create the policy. Now let me search for this policy here. Yep. Click on next. I'm going to give it a name. I'll name it SSM S3 config. So the trust policy will allow the systems manager to run the automation document, which in turn will enable the versioning on the S3 bucket. So create this role. Now come back to the remediation window. Here we have to pass the IAM role. Copy the ARN and then configure it here. Click on save changes. Now our remediation is configured successfully. Now let's execute that remediation manually. Let me click on this bucket and click on remediate. So it will take a while for the automated remediation to kick in. Action has been executed successfully. Now let me go to this bucket. Versioning is disabled. Now if I refresh, now the versioning is automatically enabled using this automated remediation in the config rule. This bucket should soon move to the compliant section. In the interest of time, let me click on remediate button even for the config bucket. Yeah, even for this bucket the action has been executed successfully. Now let me go to the buckets. Even the config bucket will now have the versioning enabled. So both the buckets should be moved from the non-compliant zone as compliant. While even the other bucket should be marked as compliant. This way you can auto remediate the non-compliant resources using the config rule, and in this video we saw about using the S3 bucket versioning enabled rule to enforce versioning in our non-compliant S3 buckets. Thank you.